Hey, good morning, everybody. It is a wonderful Tuesday morning. Currently 23 degrees, and the temperature is pretty much going to steadily drop, um, slowly but steadily. 4 o'clock, it'll be around 20 degrees, and we have a 25% chance of precipitation most of the day. 7:23 is the sunrise, 4:32 is the sunset. So we gain another minute there. Um, and we're back in our study in the Judges, Judges chapter 18, and we're seeing um, the I guess the narrative of Micah and his priest and the people of Dan, and it actually names the priest at the very end of this chapter, Jonathan. Okay, so Micah, he's the owner of the compound who has sojourners come and go, and the people of Dan come and after sending spies and see that he has ordained a priest over his house, priest of his household, and created idols to worship there, a shrine in the home, and the people of Dan, they take it. And so up in 20, down in verse 25, um, the people of Dan are confronted by Micah. And in verse 25, and the people of Dan said, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household." Then the people of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his home. So, ultimately, Micah had this shrine and he had these idols, and his heart behind it, he got them by stealing his mama's money, right? And then because his mama put a curse on it, he brought it back. Okay, now the same heart, it carries along to this interaction. Okay, so he has the idols, and as soon as he sees that, um, I guess there's a curse on it, but the people of Dan can overwhelm him and kill him. He decides it's really not worth dying for, right? Overall, idols are not worth dying for. Jesus is. That's out of Philippians 1:28. Um, but God is worth dying for. Okay, not idols, right? And so whatever His will is for us, whatever His plan is for us, um, and we have it by way of the Word, right? And we know how to be different. We know how to live differently. We have the Word. We have the Scriptures as the plumb line for our lives to be built on. Um, then why do we? Why do we? And I'm guilty of it too. Why do we risk death over idols? Okay, and then on the flip side, the nation of Dan, the people of Dan, are willing to kill for idols that they know is wrong. Okay, they know is wrong, and so they go right. And the people of Dan took what Micah had made and the priest who belonged to him, and they came to Laish to the people, quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. Okay, and they named that city Dan, and I showed you on the map last week. So then they set up the carved images. Okay, verse 30: the people of Dan set up the carved images for themselves, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and the sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. All right, so the day of the captivity of the land. In 1 Samuel 4:11, this could be uh, the day that they captured the Ark of the Covenant, right? So Shiloh was just north of Jerusalem, and it was kind of like a central point, and um, that's where the Ark of the Covenant got captured. Okay, that was um, I'm having a brain freeze up on it. Um, the sons of sorry guys, sometimes my mind is spacey, but they in First Samuel, um, the sons of Eli were still his name's Phineas, I'm pretty sure, were still in charge of the ark, and the Syrians took it, and that's when they brought it and put it in front of Dagon. Dagon falls, right, and they send it on the camel's back to the people of Israel. Um, but it also could have been destroyed in 1050 with the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians came through and destroyed um, the area. So there's a battle, right, in First Samuel 2, and starting in verse 11, that kind of talks about all that. If you go through the beginning of First Samuel, and that's probably where Shiloh fell. That's where I land on it. There might be others who land somewhere else. Um, but God ultimately did in Jeremiah. He turned away. He turned away from Jeremiah 12. He turned away from Shiloh because of their sin. All right, because of their sin, and again, we wrap sin up in idols that, um, on on the surface when we first look at them, glorify God, right? But the heart behind it. What's the heart behind it? Okay, and then so in those days, so the story continues in chapter 19. The narrative continues. It's in those days. Okay, in those days, that when there was no king in Israel. Again, we have that there was no king in Israel. And, we like to blame leaders, or the absence of leaders, as reasons for our misbehavior or our unguided steps, or the reasons why we sin in this case. Um, but we have our own personal responsibility and obligation, right? Just because there was no king, Micah knew what his role as a Levite was, right? The people of Dan knew what their inheritance was, and how they were supposed to get it. But they both chose not to do what God had called them to do. So just because there's no king, it does not. There's no excuse for um, our personal victories and failures. Okay, there's no excuse for our personal victories and failures. And a certain Levite, so another Levite, who was sojourning in remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, okay, who knows Ephraim keeps coming up and coming up, who took himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. Now, concubines were kind of second class wives, um, or women that they had that were of lower esteem. Okay, that was the cultural reference of the concubine, and his concubine was unfaithful to him, so she went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem and in Judah, and was there 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys, and saw he came with joy, and the girl's father saw him, and he came with joy to meet him. Okay, so he wasn't treating her well. She steps out. I'm out of here. Okay, so again, right? Again, what is the heart behind it? Okay, what is the heart behind it? Now, was she tired of being treated lower than, or as second class? Right? What was he? Was he devoting his time to his kids, or was he devoting his time to his work? I would say probably not, considering he was a Levite, and he was sojourning, right, in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim. I doubt he was doing temple work. And what was he doing with a concubine, right? See all these um, things that are present, and things that take us away from what we're supposed to be doing, right? What God has called us to, and how we are supposed to um, conduct ourselves based on that call. Okay, and then so he goes and tries to get her, and um, he's the Levite's there, and the father-in-law asks him in, and there's this scene where they go back and forth. The father-in-law making him stay, and they remained, and then so he eats and drinks, and they stay another night. He eats and drinks and stays another night, right? And so the two men sat and ate and drank together, and the girl's father said to the man, "Be pleased to spend the night again, right? Let your heart be merry. Let your heart be merry." Okay, let your heart be merry. Um, we tend to go where the heart is merry, and what makes the heart happy. The problem is that the heart is deceptively wicked, or deceitfully wicked. When we let our heart be merry, we our hearts end up being troubled, right? Let not your heart be troubled. Okay, so we've got to be careful we're not pleasing the heart and pleasing the Lord. And so on the fifth day he rose early, this is verse 8, in the morning to depart, and the girl's father said, "Strengthen your heart and wait until the day declines." So they ate, both of them. Again, strengthen your heart. You see where this is going? Strengthen your heart, strengthen your heart. Now, as we get through the story, we're going to learn a lot about this man's heart, right? So we're the focus is narrowing, right? We see the broad picture heart in 17 and 18 of how this um, sin nature permeates a people, right? But here we're looking at the sin nature of a heart of this individual, and then how it spreads out and permeates a people again. It's very interesting. It's very interesting the way this has worked. Two Levites, right? Two and Micah, right? The heart of the individual, but how it grows and the sin expands, and we see it taking over in 18 the nation, right, or the people of Dan. And then here in 19 through 21, we're going to see Israel as a whole. We're going to see the heart of Israel as a whole. And our individual hearts are microcosms of the body as a whole.